Taiwan speaker advocates for Indo-Pacific, Crescent of defense. Truss calls for economic NATO to tackle Beijing's authoritarianism. Britain and the Netherlands to help Ukraine procure F-16s. UN warns next 5 years could be warmest recorded. Zelenskyy agrees to meet with African leaders' peace mission. Europe leads the world on crypto regulation. Biden and Republicans hopeful of a deal on U.S. debt ceiling. The WHO says don't use artificial sweeteners for weight loss.
Hello, I'm Wade Lee. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It is Thursday, May 18th, and here are your top stories. The Speaker of Taiwan's parliament praised Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines on Tuesday for helping to create a crescent of defense with Taiwan and the U.S. against China's ambitions in the Indo-Pacific region. Yu Sing-kun told the Hudson Institution think tank in Washington that the Chinese Communist Party and the leader Xi Jinping saw Taiwan just as a stepping stone to a global homogeny. He added, "We can say that protecting Taiwan equates to defending both Europe and the United States."
俄罗斯入侵乌克兰就带给民主国际的民主国家有很多的反省。
You praised Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol for calling Taiwan a global issue. You said Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had also said that granting the U.S. access to Philippine military bases was a defensive measure that would be useful if China were to attack Taiwan. He added, "The crescent of defense formed by Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines will, with American support, be a key stabilizer of peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region."
Former British Prime Minister Liz Truss said in a keynote speech in Taipei, "Free nations must commit themselves to a free Taiwan and must be prepared to back it up with concrete measures." She called for an economic NATO to tackle Beijing's growing authoritarianism. The former British Prime Minister said she had come to show support for Taiwan, which was on the front line of the global battle for freedom, under threat from a totalitarian regime of China. Truss arrived in Taiwan on Monday for a 5-day visit.
That Taiwan is a haven of free enterprise, of free...
On Wednesday, during a speech and panel discussion for a Taiwanese think tank, Truss called on Western allies to develop economic and defense cooperation in order to defend Taiwan and protect global security and trade. Truss said the world could not rely on the UN Security Council or the World Trade Organization, and instead called for a network of liberty, with free nations working together to develop an economic NATO to coordinate pushback against Beijing.
A spokesperson for UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said on Tuesday that Britain and the Netherlands are working on an international coalition to help Ukraine procure F-16 fighter jets. According to the Downing Street readout, following a meeting between Sunak and the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte at the Council of Europe summit in Iceland, the two NATO allies are trying to get the US-made warplanes to Ukraine as well as train Kyiv pilots to fly them. Belgium had confirmed its readiness to train Ukrainian pilots.
CNN reported the U.S. Air Force calls the F-16, which first flew in 1978, a relatively low-cost, high-performance weapon system. The single-engine jets can act in air-to-air or ground attack modes, flying in all weather conditions with a range of 860 kilometers. CNN cited sources briefed on the matter as reporting in March that the U.S. is working with Ukrainian pilots in the United States to determine how long it would take to train them to fly F-16s.
The UN's World Meteorological Organization warned on Wednesday that the next 5 years are expected to be the warmest period on record. The WMO said there is a 98% likelihood that at least one of the next 5 years and the 5-year period as a whole will be the warmest on record. The WMO said that greenhouse gases and the combined effect of El Niño, a natural occurring weather phenomenon, would cause temperatures to soar in 2023 to 2027.
According to the WMO, the annual mean global near-surface temperature for each year between 2023 and 2027 is predicted to be between 1.1 degrees Celsius and 1.8 degrees Celsius higher than the 1850 to 1900 average, which is regarded as a baseline due to it being the period before greenhouse gases from human activities. Arctic warming was predicted to be more than 3 times larger than the global average over the next 5 Northern Hemisphere winters. The global mean temperature in 2022 was 1.15 C above the 1850 to 1900 average.
I always needed time on my own. I never thought I could be there.
I take your blessings with your heartaches too. It's so easy and so wonderful to know it's you.
学习，一切从今天开始。Funday 英语。
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed to separate meetings with a delegation of leaders from 6 African countries to discuss a possible plan to end the war in Ukraine. On Tuesday, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said the leader of Zambia, Senegal, Republic of Congo, Uganda, and Egypt would make up the delegation along with Ramaphosa as an African leader peace mission to visit Kiev and Moscow, respectively.
He said, "Principal to our discussions are efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the devastating conflict in the Ukraine." 4 of those 6 African countries, South Africa, Republic of Congo, Senegal, and Uganda, abstained from a UN vote last year on condemning Russia's invasion. Zambia and Egypt voted in favor of the motion. Ramaphosa did not give a time frame or outline any parameters for the possible peace talks. Zelenskyy has said he would not consider a peace deal until Russian forces withdraw completely from Ukrainian territory.
The European Union's sweeping set of beefed-up cryptocurrency rules got final approval from member states Tuesday, giving the 27-nation bloc a global lead in regulating the freewheeling sector. The European Council adopted the package of rules known as Market in Crypto Assets, or MiCA, in the final steps of the bloc's legislative process. European Parliament lawmakers endorsed the rules in April, and they're expected to start taking effect in phases starting in July 2024.
The rules are aimed at improving transparency and combating money laundering and will cover stablecoins, which are usually tied to a hard currency or a commodity like gold that make them less volatile than normal cryptocurrencies. Other digital tokens as well as Bitcoin-related services such as trading platforms and digital wallets are also subject to the rules, but not Bitcoin itself. Under MiCA, crypto companies will need approval to operate in the EU and be held liable if they lose investors' assets.
The U.S. Democratic President Joe Biden said on Tuesday's hour-long Oval Office meeting was good and productive, sounding upbeat about the prospect of an agreement. Republican House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy said afterwards he believed a deal was possible by the end of this week. Without a deal, the U.S. could enter a calamitous default on its $31.4 trillion debt as soon as 1st of June. A failure by the U.S. government to meet its debt obligations could trigger global financial chaos.
Reaching the debt ceiling would mean that the U.S. government is unable to borrow any more money. This means the government would no longer be able to pay the salaries of federal and military employees. Social Security checks, payments that millions of pensioners in the U.S. rely on, would stop. Every so often the U.S. Congress votes to raise or suspend the ceiling so it can borrow more. A default, which would be a first in U.S. history, could shatter trust in America's political ability to pay its bills.
The World Health Organization has said in new guidelines artificial sweeteners may not help people lose weight, and they were also linked with a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, as well as of dying. The WHO's advice is based on a scientific review that found products containing aspartame and stevia probably do not help reduce body fat in the long term. Popular consumer products like Diet Coke and Zero Sugar Snapple contain aspartame.
The new guidance applies to all non-sugar sweeteners, including stevia derivatives and sucralose. Such products have become widely used and are commonly added to processed foods and beverages, like diet soda, or sold on their own. WHO Director for Nutrition and Food Safety, Francesco Branca, said on Monday artificial sweeteners are not essential dietary factors and have no nutritional value. They are also often used to replace sugar in highly processed foods and drinks, and therefore may encourage low-quality diets.
Now let's take a look at the vocabulary from the news of Truss calls to tackle Beijing's authoritarianism. Number 1, concrete, 确定的,具体的,有形的. We have a general idea of what we want, but nothing concrete at the moment. Number 2, tackle, 对付,处理. There are many ways of tackling this problem. Number 3, regime, 政府、政权、政体. The old corrupt totalitarian regime was overthrown. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below now to join Funday for free. I'm Wei Li, your host. I'll see you next time.